There was extensive public comment, over 2 hours of public comment, followed by upwards of 4.5 or 5 hours of City Council discussion and presentations on the matter, specifically by Councilmember Fu. The direction that was given at the conclusion of that discussion was that the city staff should work with the city attorney and Councilmember Fu on writing up the findings of censure for Mayor Kwan and the resulting consequences to ensure that they were accurate to the wishes of the maker of the motion and to ensure that they were the best legally defensible summary of those findings and consequences. You also formed a subcommittee that evening with Mayor Pro Tem Wong and Councilmember Chang to draft rules of procedure and decorum for the City Council to consider. Part of that discussion was whether these items should be returning together or separate. I will tell you, just like we said that night, they could be adopted together, they could be separated. I think I did say in the wee hours of the morning that the City Council doesn't just have a yes or no on censure. You have a series of options in front of you, and all those options and more remain available to the City Council. It's not just a yes or no sort of thing. Resolution 7649 does identify several findings for censure. They are listed here and in the staff report. They are a shorter list than what was originally presented at the initial discussions at the last council meeting. They've been refined slightly to better reflect the discussions that have happened since then. The consequences of censure that have been proposed are also before the City Council and the public. Those are in the staff report as well. The censure, importantly, does not remove Mayor Kwan from the office of mayor in title or record, and nor does it remove Mayor Kwan from the City Council or as a representative of District Number 2. Moving on to the City Council proposed rules of procedure and decorum. As was indicated in the staff report and kind of anecdotally tonight, we have a series of rules and procedures that this community has followed for its 122 years, but we haven't generally adopted very strict standards. We had a city council over the generations that really sort of passed down oral traditions on how the rules of decorum and procedures were followed. There was not much confusion when council members were on councils for 30 or 40 years working together. They understood their own norms. But now our council, for the most part, is in their first term on council. We have one council member who's in his second term. And from a staff standpoint, I think it would be helpful for everybody, the community, the council, the staff, to memorialize these rules of procedure and decorum. So the draft you have before you largely puts forth things we've always sort of followed informally and formalizes. As for instance, the Rosenberg's Rules of Order were mentioned earlier tonight. That's something that we have informally followed. We would just suggest that you adopt a document that affirmatively points to that document just for confirmation. The purpose of all of this is to promote mutual respect, civility, orderly conduct amongst elected officials, city staff, the public, et cetera, at public meetings, so we can do the public's business in the most effective and efficient way possible. The policy provisions are listed there. I'll go into those in greater detail in a moment. One of the key features of this is new to us. This is a new council. We would suggest that maybe you adopt these tonight, but think about them over the next 6 months and review them in about 6 months and consider, are they working for you? Do they need to be further refined, et cetera? So one of the recommendations in the staff report is to commit to a review in 6 months if you do adopt them tonight or shortly after tonight. Section 1 of the document identifies general standards and principles of decorum. Basically, that everybody's going to treat each other courteously, respectfully, exercise self-control, et cetera. Give open-minded consideration to all viewpoints, focus on the issues and not on personal issues, and focus on the issue at hand, not the person that's opposed to you, et cetera. Embrace respectful disagreement and dissent as part of the democratic process. It's important that we exchange ideas and everybody can be heard, everybody can have their moment, everybody can be listened to. But when it's time for decisions, that we find a way to do that professionally as well. Section 2 talks about city council meeting agendas, who prepares the agendas, et cetera, specifically prepared generally by the city manager and staff. The Ralph M. Brown Act would govern a lot of what we do. This memorializes that we commit to meeting the Ralph M. Brown Act. We would have specific rules for agenda categories Some of these things are written elsewhere in this section, but this memorializes them in this section. Public comments, one of the things we heard at the last meeting specifically was, is it fair to limit the public comments from 5 minutes down to 2 minutes and that sort of thing? So these proposed rules of procedure and decorum would identify if we have so many speakers, we'll limit it to 4 minutes. If we have so many speakers more, we'll limit it to 3 minutes, et cetera. So the public knows and the presiding officer knows what the general guidelines are. Doesn't mean that they can't be further modified at the consent of the council, but it gives us a general roadmap to follow that takes some of the stress out of especially our most heated conversations in the community. One of the proposed things was actually a suggestion by the member of the public last time is let's move these city council reports to the end of the agenda and limit where we go with the conversations to that, which is legally required. We have to report out AB 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically, that says it's a law that says if a city council member goes to something on the city's dime, if taxpayer money is spent for a council member to attend an event, they have to, at the next council meeting, report out what the benefit to the community was of that. So those reports would come at the end of the meeting. Another new kind of specific part of the agenda would be request for new business. So part of our council comments, we tend to informally ask for new agenda items amongst all of our conversations, and we've found over time that the public gets confused by that. They just act of asking for future agenda items sometimes feel like we've already decided an agenda item merely because two council members say, let's put it on the agenda. So this would have a specific agenda section so people can understand what's happening there a little more freely. So section 3 would identify, excuse me, my contacts are not cooperating right now. Additional opportunities for measures of decorum, points of order, those types of things, how to enforce it if those aren't followed. We would formally adopt the Rosenberg Rules of Order, but it would identify means of what happens if somebody isn't following those rules of order. What happens if order is lost, how do we restore it, those sorts of things. And then what happens if there's a failure to comply with those rules of order, what happens to city council actions, what happens to the person that's being disruptive in the meeting, et cetera.
Don, can we go back to that?
Sure.
So I'm sorry, it should say failure to comply with the draft policy does not invalidate the city council's actions. That's an important point. I wanted to make a clarification on that. There's a case law out there that indicates procedural rules. I'd also say that are under our charter and action of the councils and action of the council. So if there's a vote of 3 council members, it carries regardless of the procedure. So I wanted to make sure that was clear since it's not clear on the slide. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay, so now.
Actually, Madam Mayor, just a little bit further.
Apologies.
Sure. Again, the rules of decorum for the decorum at public meetings themselves, interactions with staff and the public, how the public comment should go for the members of the public as well as the city council members listening to members of the public, how council members in office should generally hold themselves while they're in office, and again, public participation. Again, a section more specifically on violations of policy and what happens then. Kind of a process for if we need to discipline a council member, what are the available options and what's the scale of enforcement and that sort of thing. That's another thing that sort of come up during this censuring discussion on. We have authorities in sort of general laws that have happened over time in the courts, et cetera, at the state level authorizations, but we've never adopted local, escalation of enforcement options. This lays out warning letters, statements of disapproval, et cetera, that include some authorities to remove people from assignments, et cetera. So again, to lay out specifically what we believe is codified elsewhere, but the city council hasn't codified yet. So this would overtly adopt these processes. So as I said earlier, our recommendation is to adopt these rules of decorum. It's good for the community. It's good for the city council. It's good for everybody. Regarding the other censure item, I'll leave that up to the city council's discretion, but I will suggest to the mayor as we go through this, you can have this conversation on both items collectively. You can split them apart. I would say that the last time we had this conversation, it was pretty effective to have the city attorney sort of facilitate the discussions. So with that, I'll be happy to answer questions you have if you have any, but I would suggest again that the city attorney, oh, actually, I'm sorry, you had a little bit of a presentation.
I just wanted to add one more thing to the staff report. I just wanted to clarify because it came up in public comment that this while this is a very detailed policy that we've put in front of the council, I want to be clear that it does allow for disagreements among the council and among the public. And it also allows for other items like signs like we have here tonight, strong language, emotional language, any sort of protected speech is absolutely allowed under the policy. So I know there was a question of that came out. I wanted to make sure that that was absolutely clear.